Ian Brown, Iguana Cantina LLC, trading as Baltimore Soundstage, 600 East Pratt Street, Class BD7 beer wine and liquor license, violation of Article 2B, 12108D, and/or violation of Rule 4.01A, sale of alcohol to female born, 2994, violation of Article 2B, 12108D, and/or violation of 4.01A, sale of alcohol to female patron, 9/1894, violation of Article 2B, 12108D, and/or violation of Rule 4.01A, sale of alcohol to female patron born 8/1894, violation of Article 2B, 12108D, and/or violation of Rule 4.01A, sale of alcohol to female patron born 6/1093. Everybody testifying, please step forward and raise your right hand.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Yes.
All right, good afternoon. Mr. Temple, is Cheryl Adams or Ian Brown here?
Cheryl Adams, yes.
Come on up, Miss Adams. How you doing? All right, do you mind coming on up here and standing next to Mr. Temple? Does Mr. Brown know that you're here today?
Yes, he does.
All
He
right.
was going to be here, but I think something happened with the snow.
All right. Yeah, and we're gonna, Mr. Temple, yeah, you don't get over here a lot, but yeah, we're doing it on the microphone now. Miss Adams is right in front of one. All right, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 sets of charges here. Admission or denials,
Denials on all.
okay? And at that time, we'll call, at this time, then we'll go ahead and start with Officer, oh, do you have anything preliminary, first of all?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I have done a memo of law that I will present afterwards.
Very well.
On the issues, but for the board to review.
All right, we'll call Inspector Abdul Hamid at this time. Inspector?
Commissioner, I would, I know I'm going to lose this, but I'm going to put my rule on witnesses.
We don't get that very often, and we'll certainly enforce it. So when we do get the request, we do enforce it. You understand the rule on against witnesses means that you, Inspector Brooks, you, Executive Secretary Daniels, and any other witnesses will have to leave the hearing room during the time which another person testifies. Once you are finished testifying, unless Mr. Temple indicates that he's going to recall you as a possible rebuttal witness, then you're welcome to remain and listen to the rest of the testimony. Additionally, while you're out in the hall or after you've done testifying, obviously don't discuss your testimony with anyone, especially one who is going to be called to testify and has not been called yet. So, all right, yes.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, if I can be called first.
Yeah, that's fine. You don't have any, I only called Inspector Umar Abdul Hamid because the report was first in our file, so we'll be happy to accommodate you there. Okay. All right, and we'll...
Your Honor, I do have, obviously, I have one witness. I said, Your Honor. I do have one witness here. I probably could designate him as the corporate representative, but I'm not going to do that in fairness, and I'm going to ask that Mr. Cheney step out.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Just in fairness to everyone here.
Thank you, because there's
I think I could have done that.
nobody on the other side to call the rule. Right,
know,
right. Thank you. All right. And we'll hear from Executive Secretary Daniels at this time.
Again, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to object to the testimony of Mr. Daniels, the Executive Secretary in this case. We did a review of the file in this matter. We've looked at the reports in this matter, and we also looked at the notice of witnesses that were going to be supplied by the Liquor Board in this case. They were the two inspectors or agents in this matter. There is no report from Mr. Daniels. There's no indication that he was going to be a witness in this matter. He is not cited in any of the reports as doing anything involved in this matter, and therefore we would object to his testimony as, first, one of surprise, and second, one of relevancy, since he was not listed, didn't do a report.
All right. I think we can hear from Mr. Daniels, and then we'll
Microphones, guys.
Please, Sam.
Mr. Daniels, you have to do the microphone, too.
I would say in response to that, Inspector Brooks specifically has reports based on notes in my own hand. I simply, using my position, elected not to write a report. However, my testimony is not going to be about the events unless I'm called either to impeach or in rebuttal. My testimony is about a meeting on 25 September, the Baltimore County Underage Drinking Coalition, attended by members of Towson University, UMBC, Baltimore County Police Department, Scott Schellenberger, the state's attorney, and others. This was held at Drum Castle Shopping Center, and one of the things they brought to our attention was their concern regarding Soundstage. So as a result of that
I'm going to
meeting,
object. I'm absolutely strenuously going to
I
object
mean,
to
this
this.
is a violation hearing, not a protest of renewal. We are only here to talk about what happened on that night and not the impetus for what caused the investigation necessarily. Let me, it's a violation, so I can huddle with my colleagues here and we can determine that. Here's where we are. Board will accept a proffer of how an investigation began. Was it by complaint?
Yes.
That kind of thing. But we certainly don't want to know details of what complaints may or may not have been given to you
I
about
wasn't-
other unproven, uncharged
I-
allegations at another
I
time.
specifically did not bring the minutes with regard to what they alleged had transpired. I'm simply saying that this was the result of a complaint from that meeting, and I gave you the participants that were at that
On
meeting.
September 25th.
That's
All right.
correct.
Thank you very much. All right, and is there anything else you want to testify to? Well,
Not unless the commission or Mr. Temple were to call me, no.
all right. And while we have you here, I mean, I think this might be helpful for the board. How often does the board conduct compliance checks?
I can't answer that.
I mean, I just saw
I'm not that active in the inspection division anymore.
Right.
If, in terms of my activity, I would have to say this is the first one in a number of years, but I can't address an inspector may
fine.
do a compliance check and I don't know about it.
Since, and I didn't know you'd be testifying either, so I figured
I think
ask
that,
you
that
rather than.
perhaps could be something asked of the inspectors.
All right. All right, well, thank you very much, Mr.
Mm-hmm.
Daniels. Do you have any questions for Mr. Daniels based on his very limited testimony?
Not at this time, but I may call him in rebuttal.
All right.
Okay. Yeah, no problem.
You'll have to
Okay.
hang out front. Thank you, Mr. Daniels.
Your Honor, this may,
And Mr. Daniels, if you could get Inspector Abdul Hamid, thank you.
may I have my client sit, Mr. Chairman, since this may take some time?
Good afternoon, Inspector.
Yes. For the record, Inspector Abdul Hamid, ABDUL-HAMID, Baltimore City Liquor Board.
All right, thank you very much, Inspector. You filed a report in this matter dated October 16th, 2012.
That is correct.
All right, and you were at the premises, the licensed premises owner about September 27th, 2012?
That is correct.
What, if anything, happened at that time?
On September 27, 2012, I conducted a random compliance check of the premises known as Baltimore Soundstage. The investigation was conducted during the board initiative, including myself, Inspector Brooks, Inspector Mark Fossler, with command oversight by Executive Secretary Daniels. I entered the establishment at approximately 23:45 hours, 11:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Upon entering the establishment, I began observing patron activity. The scope of this investigation was to determine whether there was alcohol service and/or consumption to or by underage persons and identify and record any instances of such. As I moved to the rear of the establishment, I observed what appeared to be a patron in possession of an alcoholic beverage. As I approached the patron, she began to move away rapidly. I immediately followed the patron, later identified via Maryland MVA identification as Leanna Brittany
object.
Rawlin.
Base.
Two bases, probably more than that. It's hearsay, because she's going to tell me what he read. That's classic hearsay. It's an out-of-court statement. The declarant in this case is an ID. Secondly, best evidence. There's no ID, there's no copy of ID, there's nothing in regards to this. Now, I understand that the rules before an administrative board such as this can be more lax, But in this case, because it is the essential evidence in this case, we don't have, we haven't seen any of the people that are allegedly minors here, so they cannot testify. The central issue here is an age issue, and the central evidence in that is going to be a document that isn't here, no copies of it here, I've never seen, and are not contained in the file. Nor is that individual here to testify and say, I'm 21, I'm 18. So I think there are multiple levels of problems with that, and those are my objections.
Will allow it subject to cross-examination. We're going to overrule your objection, allow it
I
subject
understand,
to
and just for the
cross,
record,
obviously.
and I overheard the chairman indicate it's subject to cross-examination. The very point of hearsay is, I can't cross-examine this piece of paper because it's not here.
And we'll have.
Understanding
right.
your ruling.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, Inspector, you identified.
Leanna Brittany Rawlin. Soundex number is R as in Rawlin, 450-493-098-435. Date of birth listed is 6/10/93. Caucasian female, approximately 5'3", 105 pounds. And I observed her consuming a beverage. I questioned suspect Rawlin as to the contents of the cup, to which she readily admitted
Objection,
was an
yes, sir.
alcoholic beverage.
Yeah, we'll sustain the objection. All right, you can keep going in your report, starting with I identified.
Starting with identified.
The very last
Last sentence.
sentence.
Suspect Rawlin indication. No, I'm lost.
This one right here.
Oh, okay. I identified both suspect Rawlin and her companion to staff and ordered them removed from the establishment. Management was notified of the violations, and this agent exited the establishment without further incident.
All right. All right, anything else? Did you smell the drink? I mean, I'm going to ask you the obvious.
I did, but I did not include it in the report.
That's okay. If you didn't include it in your report, board still wants to
I
hear
did.
about
Standard
your experience.
procedure, anytime you take a drink from somebody, is to ask them what it is and smell it, just to make sure it is alcoholic beverages, in case they say it's Coke.
All right, witnesses with you.
I didn't hear his answer.
He said he did. But he said he smelled it.
Standard procedure in this
Did he
case
smell alcohol?
is, that's what I said, so I'm repeating the entire statement. Let me repeat the entire
No,
statement for you.
no, Inspector, just answer, did you smell alcohol?
Yes, I did smell alcohol.
All right, then I do have some questions because of, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for that question. We would have been out of here quicker. Inspector, first of all, based upon an issue that the chairman has brought forth, your report starts out, I conducted a random compliance check. What did you mean by a random compliance check?
It means that during the course of our operation in the liquor board, we sometimes go to different locations randomly and give them compliance checks.
So it's just like you pick some place and you decide to go there.
That is correct.
That's a random check.
That is correct.
Okay. That's interesting. When did you leave the premises?
Total time in the premises, we might have left there approximately maybe 1, a little after 1.
So you were there for 2 hours, over 2 hours then? Am I
No,
right?
about an
11?
hour. We got
11?
there about 11:45.
I thought you said after 1. Maybe I heard that.
Well, 11:45 and then 1 o'clock. That sounds like an hour and some change, maybe.
Hour and change. And so you were there for over an hour.
That is correct.
You were there with the executive secretary, Mr. Daniels, is that correct?
Amongst others, yes.
Right, and he's your boss, isn't he?
Yes.
Okay. And since he's your boss and as well as doing your duty, you're going to try and find any violations that you can, because that's what you were there for. Is that correct?
That's my job every day.
That's excellent. There were two other inspectors with you, Inspector Brooks and Foster. Is that correct?
That's correct.
They were present during the entire time that you were there. Is that correct?
No, in fact, we were split into teams. Executive Secretary Daniels and Inspector Brooks worked together, and myself and Inspector Foster worked together.
Okay. But you were there, okay, you were all there at the same time in the premises?
That is correct.
Okay. To your knowledge, well, you were doing compliance to the room. Tell us what you were doing.
Observing the patron activity.
Okay. Were you confronting patrons, talking to patrons?
In certain instances where patrons appeared to be underage, we would approach them and ask them to present their ID, check them for, in fact, to see if they had the identifying wristbands or whatnot.
Right. And both you and, since you were with Inspector Foster, were doing that. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And the only alleged violation is this. So there were numerous other individuals that you might have thought were underage that it turns out, based upon your investigation, were in compliance with the law. Isn't that correct?
I'm not understanding the question.
Okay. Since you did numerous contacts with other customers, you didn't find any other violations. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Now, your report, I know you try to make them as accurate as possible. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And did you actually read your report. Did you have a chance to review it before this hearing?
I did.
I'm sorry?
I did.
Okay. Did you leave anything of substance out of your report,
Not that I can think of.
other than you smelled the alcohol?
Other than I smelled the alcohol,
Yeah. You left that out of your report, didn't you?
I did, in fact.
Your inspection was done on September 27th. Is that correct?
That is correct.
But your report wasn't done until 19 days later. Is that correct?
That is correct.
When you came in or left the building, did you observe the venue's screening process, ID screening process?
No, we entered through the secondary egress, which is on Marketplace.
I'm sorry, you're saying that the marketplace is the secondary?
We came through where they normally let people out, not where they take the people in. Normally where they take them in is on the side on Lombard Street, but we went through the exit.
Did you take the opportunity to then go look and see what they were doing?
Where? At the front entrance?
Front entrance?
No, that was not the scope of our investigation.
Well, I mean, did you talk to management about their process for IDing or screening people?
Again, that was not the scope of our investigation.
My only question is, did you do that?
It was not the scope of our investigation.
So the answer is no, you did not
That
do
is,
that.
no, sir.
Did you happen to, when you were on Marketplace, did you happen to see any police officers out there?
Yes, sir. There was police presence.
All right. And the police kind of regularly station themselves at the power plant in that area, isn't that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. I looked at your report. It doesn't indicate that you spoke with the police at all about this, did you?
Executive Secretary Daniels, heading of the operation, did all the contact with the police department and whatnot.
My question, since you're testifying is, did you have any contact with the police?
No, I did not.
Okay. Did you, while being in there for over an hour, observe any bartenders, barbacks, or staff of Iguana supply underage individuals with alcoholic beverages?
I did not.
And in your report, there's nothing in your report that ascertains how this customer obtained the beverage in question, is there?
No.
There's nothing in your report on whether the individual had a wristband or not, is there?
Nothing in the report, no.
And you're aware that wristbands are one of the methods in which this club, because you already testified to it, uses to distinguish over 21 and under 21.
That is correct. Yeah.
The customer presented you, as you indicated, with an ID. That was a driver's license, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And that you took from that driver's license a certain amount of information, the Soundstage number, the date of birth, height, weight, name, isn't that correct?
That is correct.
That driver's license would also have had the address, isn't that correct?
That is correct.
And that information was not in your report, was it?
No, sir.
Okay. wouldn't you think that that information would be helpful for the venue to do their own investigation?
You asking me a think question? No, I don't think so.
Okay, so how would a venue or the licensee know where this individual is from or how to contact them if you leave out of your report the identifying information that would supply that, which is their address?
For the record, all persons in Maryland who possess a valid identification or driver's license are individually identified by their Soundex number. Soundex numbers can be referenced through the MVA to indicate home address as designated on said license. Soundex number was in fact included in
I would
that
ask you to take judicial
report.
notice of the fact that that is not correct, that you have to be a representative to obtain that information. I can't get somebody's,
Yeah, I mean, if
An
people
attorney
opt
could.
out, I mean, yeah, I
There's
don't
a
know.
million of
I don't know that, but I mean, I'll hear it from you that you're saying that's the case. I just don't.
An attorney
Sure of
could subpoena or request
Yes,
through the
yes,
court.
definitely. Subpoena will get it for you,
That's
guaranteed.
absolutely correct.
am I correct that the staff at Iguana cooperated with you in their performance of your duties?
They did.
Okay. You indicated in your report that the staff removed her at your request.
That is correct.
And your report also indicates that a companion was removed.
Yes.
Your report doesn't indicate if that companion was under 21, over 21?
No, he was over 21.
Okay, okay, but your report doesn't indicate that, does it?
No, it does not.
It does-
Companion of Miss
Rawlin.
Miss Rawlin, okay.
So you had them remove an over 21 individual, a legitimate customer, who had clearly done nothing that's indicated in your report that was wrong, removed from the venue, is that correct?
That's not the case. No, sir. In fact, when I asked the establishment to remove Miss Rawlin, the individual listed as her companion was in fact her boyfriend, who, you know, could not allow her to be removed without, in fact, taking her with him. It was cold at night. And,
Let me
you know,
read
it's her
your
boyfriend.
report for you. I identified both suspects, Rawlin and her companion, to staff and ordered them removed from the establishment. Who's the person that ordered them?
I did.
Did you have any contact with the other, not Foster, but Inspector Brooks or Mr. Daniels during the time that they were in there?
That is correct. Yes, I did.
You did? You
Yes.
talked to them. Were you aware that there was an issue of fake IDs in their reports or in their, when they came in contact with customers?
Not until the briefing at the end of this operation.
Okay. Did you at any time attempt to ascertain if the individual that you were involved with had a fake ID?
Upon review of that license, I determined that it was not fake.
That's not my question. We will stipulate that that license might be valid. My question to you is, did they have on their possession a fake ID?
No, not to my knowledge.
Okay. Did you ask them?
If they had a fake ID, no,
Yes.
I did not.
Now, you well know that possession of alcohol by a minor is a criminal offense.
I do.
You all, in this matter, and there were police officers outside at that time.
That is correct.
Did you attempt to contact those police officers to take action against the individual that you claim had alcoholic beverages and was under 21?
No, sir, I did not.
No further questions.
All right, thank you. Inspector, a couple questions for you. How many people were in the building when you were there?
500, 600.
600. And please describe or tell us why there was a delay in your report. We're used to seeing your reports filed about the next day.
During this particular case, I believe that there was a possibility of a ongoing investigation. Normally, the standard procedure is anytime we find a violation of this type of nature at the location, what we do is normally schedule a couple other visits. In this particular instance, before we could reschedule another visit at this location, there was some outside interference that basically quashed our investigation. So at that point, we had to file any reports we had
I've got to
outside.
object.
Well, I don't know
On
if you should
multitude
object.
of
I think
reasons.
I feel like I need to hear this, but maybe not, this is not the appropriate forum to hear it, but this is the first, obviously, in addition to being finders of fact, we also have some kind of supervisory role over this agency, but this is certainly the first that we've heard of it.
And I can tell you the first that I've heard of it, and I've represented this client since the beginning.
All right, so, well, now I do want to ask you, How often are you engaged in compliance checks?
Not as often as I like, actually. We used to do them pretty regularly, but because of continued political pressure, we have had to put those on the side.
So what you're saying is you haven't done a compliance check in years.
No, not years. It's been,
When was the last one you did?
this probably was the last one. I think we haven't done anything since October of last year.
No, but prior to October of
Oh,
last
prior
year.
to, we would, all summer, all last summer.
What places would you check?
We do different establishments. We do adult entertainment. We do anywhere where we normally hear some grumblings or rumblings about there may be illegal activity. We schedule them for random compliance checks and just go out and we normally try to hit a variety of different types of establishments when we do these so that we can create a basis of partisanship, I guess, and no bias when we go out
Did you
to
do
these
that?
establishments.
Not even a question?
Yeah, there was, we had been some other places, and I couldn't tell you where right at this particular juncture, but we'd been some other places prior to coming to this establishment.
Can you give me a description of the variety
we're the
that
board.
you spoke
They,
of?
oh,
You
well,
can
they
tell-
were
Yeah, we'd be
downtown. We did a couple of adult entertainment establishments. We did, I want to say, what's this other place on? It's a bar. It's Redwood Street. I can't think of the name of it.
We know where you're
Yeah,
talking.
yeah, right there, Redwood and Calvert. You know the name of the place. Red Velvet Rope. That's what it's called. Dubai, whatever. They changed the name so much.
Yes. No, I'm done.
Oh, when you took this information from the patron, how did you record it?
No, on my phone. Normally, I use my phone as a memo feature, and I record the information. Then I go back and
Was there music on at that time?
yes, there was music playing.
And as a expert of club environments, was the music loud?
Yes, it was loud.
And you recorded in the middle of a club these numbers, the Soundex numbers and his date of
Yeah,
birth?
talking into your phone, you can pretty much hear. I mean, just like the commercial says,
Do
background
you still
noise.
have that
and
recording?
Let's see. I will say that. Let's take a look. Oftentimes I keep these. I don't know if I have that one, but
Well, while you're looking for that, is it normal practice for you to take a picture of the identification when you come across underage drinking?
no, that is not standard practice. 9/20.
Why not, if I'm...
We had been advised against that in the past for whatever legal reasons, and I couldn't quote them to you now, but we've had instances where we've brought cases with pictures of IDs and even instances where we've included persons' addresses in our reports, at which we were advised against because of, again, some legal issues in prior cases where we've had that brought up by other attorneys. So, as a matter of practice, we stopped doing that.
Who advised you to start doing that within the agency? You can give me a title.
Whoever the supervisor was at the time, chief inspector or executive secretary. I mean, this has been done so long ago that, I mean, we've been doing this for 10 years or more, where we've stopped including certain things like pictures of ID and home addresses, which they've advised against many times. I have something from the 28th, and I'm not sure if this is it or not. I'd like to listen to it first before I present it to the
From the
court.
28th?
Well, right, it was 11:45 when we went in, so the 28th would be effectively that same day. And this is at midnight, a little after midnight, so, but without knowing, let me just listen to it before I play it, so I make sure it's the right thing. Wait a minute.
What's your name? Destiny Mitchell. Spell your last.
All right. Oh, this is the wrong date, sorry.
Leanna Brittany R-A-U-L-I-N. Soundex is R's and Rollins.
I'm going to object. It's the same basis that I had before. And an additional basis is that was never included in the commission's file.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and sustain it, but the Commissioner Smith has asked, do you have a copy of it? And indeed you do. Okay. But obviously he didn't get a chance to listen to it, or he would have wanted to listen to it by now. All right, anything else for
Nothing.
Inspector. All right, thank you very much, Inspector.
problem.
If you grab, or asked Inspector Karen Brooks
Do you
to.
think I might be recalled? Should I remain
Yes.
sequestered?
Yes, I may recall it.
All right.
Thank you, Inspector.
Before Inspector Brooks testifies, I obviously have a deep concern about some of the things that were said by this inspector.
Go ahead, it's just you,
Particularly-
us, and a bunch of TV cameras. Please,
Yeah, I don't
continue.
mind. Particularly, there seems to be some, not seems to be, there's clear some assertion that someone has put political pressure, that's a word that was used by him, in order to delay in this matter. To me, it's offensive to my client, it's offensive to me as the attorney for them, and I believe it would be offensive to this board that I've been through for many times to believe that political pressure was used in any matter to influence you. I have some deep concerns about this inspector's testimony based upon that.
I mean, let us say that we will address those allegations, if that's what you want to call them. But again, this is a violation hearing. The same reason I didn't want to hear what transpired at the June meeting of the underage task force. Nothing matters except what happened on September 27, 2012, for the purposes of this hearing.
I understand.
But
But it's a bell that's been rung,
We-
and it can't
we
be
heard it
unrung.
too. We heard
And
it
it's
too.
not only in front of the fact finders, but it's in front of the world. And that's, the difficulty here. It's in front of the world now, and it's objectionable on many levels. But I understand your ruling, Mr. Chairman. I understand it.
all right, Inspector Brooks.
Good afternoon,
Good
Inspector Karen
afternoon.
Brooks from the Baltimore City Liquor Board. Here reporting about my findings of the Iguana Cantina located at 600 East Pratt Street on September the 27th, 2012, beginning at approximately 11:45 p.m.
All right, can you hang on one second?
Okay.
When did you write this report?
I don't have
If
the
you know.
exact date, but it was within days of, of the actual incident.
Okay.
The actual visit.
Days, as in 10 days, 19 days?
No, usually within like 3 days, 3 or
Okay.
4 days, we are required to
Go
determine.
on. I just wanted to get a time frame there. Go on.
So during the course of a compliance check of the above listed establishment, if you want me to read it verbatim,
Yes,
okay.
please.
I did observe one Alexandra Lucci, date of birth 2/9/94, consuming an alcoholic beverage, which was later identified as sex on the beach. Alexandria was wearing a wristband when I approached her, and upon inspection of her identification card, I did determine that the ID used was fake and that she was
Objection.
actually,
Move to strike.
okay.
All right, basis.
Okay. I will use in similar basis, and this is even more crucial in these matters. One is, she's about to testify what she saw in a document that I cannot cross-examine. That's a violation of hearsay. It's clearly a violation of the best evidence rule and any exemption that they would have. She's also about to give an opinion as to that document, which without that document in my possession, or allow me to at least review that document, I cannot get any opinion that would be counter to that. Nor can this board make its own ascertain whether or not it is a fake or legitimate or not. She has not indicated any qualifications that we're allowed to do that, and we are completely prejudiced because we don't have the opportunity to inspect it, to review it, and to make our own determination on to whether it's fake, how good a fake it is, how obvious a fake it is. I mean, these are crucial evidentiary issues that are fundamentally unfair. And,
All right, we are going to grant your motion in part and deny your motion in part. As to the move to strike, we'll go ahead and grant that. As to, you're going to need to change the reading of your report, so to speak, a little bit. And the board will determine, because we're an administrative hearing agency, and we don't operate as a criminal court, for
These are the
example.
IDs that we confiscated
Okay, you do
from-
have the IDs?
Yes, we do have
Okay,
the
well, that's
IDs.
different.
These are the IDs that we
However, in
confiscated.
your testimony, I want you to say, and I'll give you a chance, Mr. Temple, I'll give you, I
another
anticipate your objection, but let me just finish this one. The board, again, as administrative hearing agency, without qualifying you as an expert in fake IDs, the board has no problem with you saying, I believed that
Okay.
the ID was fake, rather than I did determine. So you may continue,
Can be qualified. Can you give a qualification?
well, that's, maybe.
And I can tell you how I determined it.
We have We have, in the past, qualified our inspectors as experts in various fields. I don't believe we've ever qualified anybody as an expert in the field of identification, but I will
Oh, I'm sorry.
go ahead at this time and let you finish your report. Okay, to the extent that you can. I mean, and then she hasn't presented any evidence to us yet that you haven't seen. So continue with the report.
So, her date of birth, 2/9/94, she was consuming an alcoholic beverage that was later identified as sex on the beach. She was wearing a wristband when I approached, and upon inspection of the identification card, I did determine that I believe the ID that she was using was a fake, and that she was actually 18 years old. Alexandria produced the ID with the name Raymond Kelly A. from New York State. She stated that she used the said ID to gain interest into the club and paid $12 to receive a wristband and to drink alcohol. My notation about the photo ID is the photo on the ID does not look like the minor, that was in possession of it, and the ID has several obvious errors.
Objection.
Good.
Same.
All right.
as previous. And I have additional objections in regards to any of this testimony, because it's all based upon evidence that was never produced. And I'm ready to submit some affidavits in regard to that.
Ms. Brooks, do you have, you say you do have what you believe to be the fake ID of Miss DeLucy on you?
Yes.
Okay, and you don't have her real ID, do you?
This is the only identification card that she had on her person. She emptied out her pocket. She didn't have a pocketbook or anything, and this is what she had.
So that's all she had?
Yes, sir.
Wait, I'm a little concerned or confused in your report, because how do you know that's her, how do you know her name is Alexandra DeLucy?
Okay, so when we come in contact with someone that we suspect to be under 21, just by looking at them, most of the time, you could tell that's a child. You know what I mean? We go up to them. I approached her, okay? I looked at her. She's across, not that far from me, drinking. I approached her. I had my badge on me in my front. Number one, when she saw my badge, she tried to walk away. That's the first indication that something is wrong. She tried to set her cup down, So I walked over to her, nicely, messy your ID. First it was, I don't have anything. Well, how did you get in? You have to show your ID to get in. She goes into her pocket, pulls out the ID, the identification card.
The Raymond Kelly
Yes, had
ID.
Raymond Kelly on
Okay.
it. She pulls out her identification card, and I just started to ask her questions about it, like, what's your zip code? Look at the ID. It's issued August the 13th, 2011, and expires a year later. That doesn't happen. The expiration date is usually 5 to 7 years. So it's certain things that you see on an ID that lets you know that it's not real. And when you question the person that has the identification card, they can't tell you specific things on the card, like what color are your eyes? They don't know, what's the class of your driver's license? Certain things that a person that if it was your ID would know, they can't answer that question. That's usually indication that, it's not real. And then you ask them, okay, we make them comfortable. We let them know, this is not about you. You're not going to go to jail, but we need to get to the truth. Is this your ID? Is it real? No, it's fake. Do you have a real ID? No. And then they give us their real name or what we believe to be real. You understand what I'm saying?
I do completely. And have you been trained in
Oh,
identifications?
absolutely, absolutely. I've been doing this for 13 years. When I started here, we did nothing but investigations. We've gone through trainings where we use the card swiper to identify fake IDs, where if you don't have the swiper or if the ID doesn't have a barcode on the back, just certain things, the way it feels, the way it looks, the background color of it, where certain things would be on specific licenses. And we see New York State licenses all the time. So this is not new to me.
All right. You can continue on your report if you like, as I say, subject to objection.
The second individual, Gianna Bergamo, 109 Wilshire Court, Old Bridge, New Jersey, 08857, date of birth 9/1894. She was consuming an alcoholic beverage. It was the drink du jour, which was a drink that was given at the club as like the drink of the night. That if you got the identification band, paid your $12, your drink du jour was like included, and this information was obtained by just asking the questions. You know, what does your ID and what does your band entitle you to? This is how we obtain the information that we obtain. Gianna was wearing a wristband, and I have all of the wristbands that we confiscated from the young ladies. She paid $12 as well to enter and to drink. She showed an ID from Arizona, which in my opinion, I felt was a fake ID to enter the club.
And we'll sustain it at this time, but we'll go back and discuss that after you continue your testimony.
Okay,
On to
now
the next person.
the ID from Arizona, the first thing that jumped out at me was that it expired 50 years from the date that it was issued. That's how I knew that the young lady was not being.
How you thought, yeah.
Right, how I knew it, really, honestly, I really knew it. So that was like the first thing. The ID looks, you know, it just doesn't look professional. It doesn't feel like an ID card. And when I asked her certain questions, like what was her height, she didn't know. She didn't know, like, what month it was issued. Just little things like that she didn't know. I said, did you get this renewed around your birthday or did you do it later? It was before my birthday. No, it was on my birthday, but the 50 years expiration, you know, dead giveaway, it's not her, okay? So her picture was on this one. But it definitely was not her correct age. After talking to her and, you know, calming her down, letting her know she wasn't going to jail, we just needed to get information. She gave us her correct name, her correct address, date of birth, things like that. Moved on to the next lady, Gabrielle Diamato, also from New Jersey, date of birth 8/18/94. She was drinking an apple martini. She was not wearing a wristband. She used an ID from Connecticut, which had her picture on it. The ID from Connecticut also, it was something, I think the indication for me on this one was, it was like a 20-year expiration for this one. And it had that her height was 63 inches, not using feet and things like that. It was little things like that, just let me know that she was one that was suspect as well. All three girls were under the age of 21. We recorded their information, notified the management of our findings, and the evening did end without further incident.
Now, wait a minute. Did these other two persons have another ID on them?
No, all three had just the IDs that we confiscated, and there was even an option for them to come to our office to pick these up if they could, you know, bring in their, you know, ID, and they had to come with an adult, but
Well, let me
of
ask
course
you
none
this.
of them did.
Gabrielle D'Amato,
Okay.
does the license that you have in front of you say August 18th, 1994 on it?
No, it says 1991.
All
That
right.
would make her 21.
But I mean, but you got these girls'
Date of births
ages
from
from
them.
them
Yes, sir.
without any other verification.
Well,
I mean, I'm not trying to criticize you or the agency, but we didn't back it up.
All we had was what we had in the fake ID. We knew it was not real, okay? Their admission, you know, their admission.
It might be fake.
Okay, well, we knew that
I understand.
it didn't give credible information because
Okay.
no ID
But what I
expires
mean is
50
we
years
didn't
from.
we don't have, the agency doesn't have the ability, like the Baltimore Police Department.
Right, to
maybe
run
call in a
someone.
license check, right,
Right,
and
no.
get a date of birth. Okay,
No, sir.
thank you. All right, is there anything else about your report you'd like to testify to at this time?
No, sir.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I want to make a record based upon this. When I received the charges in this case, what I naturally do as a course of conduct is review the commission's file. I had one of the staff members go in and obtain all the reports that are relevant to this case, which they did. That contained a memorandum from Jane Schroeder indicating that the two inspectors that have testified here today should appear. There was a copy of the charges included in that, and there were the two reports that have been discussed. There was nothing else. I was concerned because there was nothing else in regard to that, so I had another staff member follow up on 3 occasions, and I'm going to present to the board. I did not have her here today because I anticipated that what was going to be said by the commission's staff would be correct. I've specifically instructed her, and she did, inquire as to whether there was anything else, including any fake IDs, that were involved in this case. My concern was that there was a secret file, something else, evidence wasn't being produced. I'm going to present that affidavit of Lauren Faint. I can have her produced to testify in this case, but you will note that she called on 3 separate occasions to inquire specifically about this. She attempted to get a hold of Inspector Brooks, at least on 2 of those occasions. I don't criticize the inspector. I'm not even sure that she got the messages in that regard. But the board's staff advised her that they did. I have a feeling today that they did not do that. The staff didn't do that. But even more disconcerting is the last paragraph in which she spoke with Jane Schroeder about this matter and was specifically told, and the basis of my presentation today is on that assuming that we had all the evidence in this case, she was stated that they didn't, stated that if in the report it didn't say they confiscated the IDs, and it doesn't say that in that case, and it wasn't contained in the board, they don't exist. We now know today that something exists. Article 24 of the Maryland Constitution, the Declaration of Rights,
It always
requires-
comes back to it, doesn't it?
And it should. It talks about fundamental fairness. And it says that agencies like this agency have to handle their cases in a fundamentally fair way. Secret files are not a fundamentally fair way. I am not criticizing Inspector Brooks at all. And I want her to know that and the board to know that. I believe if the board staff had done what they should have done, or at least talked to Inspector Brooks, we might not be at this objection now. I believe she's been honest, maybe a little biased, but honest in her presentation in this case. But the board cannot, as a matter of fundamental fairness, allow its staff to do exactly what they did in this case, which is to misinform, conceal evidence that is the primary evidence, that's the kicker in this evidence, from the licensee. It's just not fair.
Do you want a postponement, Mr. Temple?
Can I have a?
Yes. You may. Yeah, it's the fair thing. Yeah, we'll be off the record. No, I mean, that's the first thing, is that if you didn't know these licenses were here, before you speak, we give them a chance to look at them.
Okay.
All right, we're going to go back on the record. Mr. Temple, you had a chance to talk with your client?
I did, Mr. Chairman. My client has been distressed over this matter since the incident. And you will recall that the incident they're talking about is September 27th, but charges were not brought for whatever reason months and months later. So we've been pending those, awaiting and awaiting. We've done our investigation. We've called our witnesses. It's disruptive to their business. It's disruptive to them personally.
They want to go forward.
They want to move
Yeah,
forward to
all
get
right.
this over with and behind them. Again, I understand why you're offering that. And again, it just doesn't seem particularly fair in this instance to what occurred.
All right.
I have a question, if you would.
Go ahead.
Without the fake IDs, even though we referenced them in our reports, without that, is our testimony alone enough? What we saw, what we witnessed, what we communicated with the individuals?
We will answer that question for you, but give us a second. I don't think we're ready just this second to answer that question, but I promise you an answer on that subject. All right, if there's nothing further, are there any questions for Inspector Brooks from the commissioners? I'd probably just leave it. All right, there's no other questions for the inspector. Inspector, thank you very much.
Excuse me.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah,
To
sorry.
To quote a famous
was-
lawyer, what am I, a potted plant?
So, all right, Inspector Brooks, it is your chance to be cross-examined now by Mr. Temple.
She didn't really think.
I was
she
trying
could
to get her
away,
out
did
of
you?
here.
Did you?
Sorry, yeah, sorry.
Inspector Brooks, how long were you in the facility, the venue?
The entire time of the
The-
visit, yes. So approximately an hour, maybe hour and a half. I'm not sure exactly the time we left.
And you were under the Did you create or make any notes about what was occurring?
Basically, the executive secretary reduced, our findings or notes in writing, and,
Wait a minute,
we
then,
basically went off of that.
who did those notes? You or the executive secretary?
The executive secretary. So this is how
So
we,
the,
you want me to explain to you?
no.
Okay.
I want to question you.
Okay.
It's the only benefit I have as being a lawyer. You used then the notes of another individual to prepare your report.
Yeah, but he couldn't write the notes other than what I told him. I was the one questioning the individual. He just had the ink pen and paper. Now, mind you, I had 3 young ladies that wanted to get away from me to keep an eye on. I can't write and record and ask questions and all at the same time.
But you're not doing the recording, he's doing the recording.
Yeah, he wrote it down for me, yes, sir.
So wait, no, I got to
ahead.
jump in here because this is the first time we've ever heard of. This sounds like an unusual type of investigation compared to what the board's normally hearing about.
No, it's not. It's
All right.
This is our normal, like, underage initiative type things.
What's new to me,
Okay.
what's new to me with your report is you're saying that you go and was he standing next to you?
Yes, like,
Okay,
we
and he
were
was taking
literally-
it down.
yes,
you
we
didn't
were
go
literally-
okay.
Like within inches of each other. You know, he's basically sat on the table and had paper and pen writing down the notes. The young ladies, if I could use the word, wrangled them. We saw them in a group. We brought them over to where we were working, where the light was, where we could see, where I could look at the ID, and we began our questioning, and went from there.
And shortly thereafter, him taking the notes, you were able to verify that he took, whether or not he took the correct notes.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I'm literally right there. We're yelling in each other's ears, spelling the names correctly and
So the
things.
report that you presented to us today is a clear depiction of what was given to him.
Oh, absolutely. We're professional and we stand on our word and we're gonna report the right stuff.
But you don't write down your
All right.
own observations.
If the situation allows us to, but I had 3 young ladies, literally. It was impossible for me to keep an eye on them, ask them questions, hold them to these IDs, and write the notes at the same time. The music was loud, so it was just easier to process it that way, to have him do the writing while I asked the questions. It was just easier to do it that way. So it's like I'm talking to you right now, and I'm asking you, okay, what's your name? And you say Elizabeth Smith, and I'm telling him it's Elizabeth Smith. And, afterwards, the young ladies saw what we wrote and everything, so it was just
But that begs
easier.
the question for this commissioner, that there's always 3 sides of a story, your side, my side, and the truth. So I'm taking your word based on your signed report
Yes, ma'am.
that was actually written down by a third person.
The notes were written down by Mr. Daniels. And
Right.
I wrote the
It
report.
was his notes. Very similar also to students in a class. There's 1 lecturer, there's 4 students. Everyone may not write down word for word exactly what the professor said. I'm interested in what you saw, and I was under the impression that all of our inspectors wrote down their own experiences.
I wrote my report based off of the notes that I had Mr. Daniels to write on my 3 individuals. I'm standing right there as he's writing it down. I'm the one that talked to the individuals, questioned them, heard their response, saw what he wrote.
Okay.
But clearly, if you had a clear memory of what occurred, you wouldn't need the notes, would you?
I have a clear memory, but I don't know these people. I can't remember everyone's name,
So
so you have to take down notes,
Right, and you had to rely on those notes to make your report.
Absolutely. But I mean, if I could turn this
Did you
report
find it
over.
unusual? Did you find it unusual that the executive secretary of this board was a transcriber taking notes for you, an inspector?
No, it's not. It's not unusual.
Not
at all.
unusual?
No, it's not. It's not. Things that I pick up on, he may not have picked
No,
up
no,
on.
no. That's not my question. My question is, this is the executive secretary of this board. He's not an inspector. He's not the chief inspector. Okay. And he's out taking notes for you, doing a random compliance check. You didn't find that unusual at all?
No, sir, I didn't.
Does he do it often?
And yeah, well, before he was the executive secretary, he was the chief inspector, so it was more, when he was the chief inspector than the executive
Then now,
secretary.
because he's executive secretary.
Yes.
Which entrance did you go into to the building?
Okay, so there's what's this, Pratt Street, I think it is, and then it's Market Street, so it was the side entrance. So it was
Pratt Street, is that the entrance you went on, or Market?
no, it's whichever one is like to the side of the building. That would be Marketplace.
Marketplace.
Yes.
So you guys went into Marketplace.
Yes, we went in through that
Okay.
entrance.
Okay.
It was like a ramp. We had to go around a ramp.
There, did you observe the ID process?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Did you think to do that? I mean, did you say, I want to check how they do this process?
No. The people that were standing outside checking the IDs, I didn't go over to them. I went to the lady that was on the inside that was basically collecting the money and handing out the bands. That's how I found out what the band meant, because there were two different bands. One was for riding the mechanical bull, and the other was for drinking and, your entrance.
You never actually saw the process where they get the bands, how they're ID'd, or anything like
No.
that, did you? Did anybody that you know of that was in this inspection inquire of how the process is done?
I don't know. I know I didn't.
You did
so-
not. And you weren't aware were you aware that wristbands were used as a way of identifying individuals over 21 or under 21 prior to coming to the facility?
From my understanding, the lady said that these wristbands were issued to persons that were 21 and able to drink.
Right,
So,
that's not my question.
Okay.
My question is, before you got there, did you know that process?
No. This is my first time in the Iguana Cantina, probably in, I don't know how many years.
Did you happen to notice police officers outside?
No, I didn't.
You didn't see any of the police officers that were there? The individuals that you confronted, you've talked us to a couple times about how you talked to them. You tried to calm them down, tried to assure them that they weren't going to get in trouble.
That they weren't going to jail.
Okay.
Because their first question was, am I going to jail?
And you told them they weren't?
No, I said,
Okay.
we're not
And
the police.
You didn't cite them or anything, did you?
No, we don't
You
have
didn't-
the ability.
You didn't call the police and have them cited, did you?
No, sir.
You understood, though, that they were committing a criminal offense.
Yes.
Okay. They're not only committing an offense, a Maryland state offense, but they were using, according to you, fake IDs in order to procure alcohol. Is that correct?
Yes.
Were you aware that's a federal offense?
No, I didn't know it was a federal offense.
Okay. But you're a trained inspector, been doing this for many years, and you weren't aware that using fake IDs. Well, let me ask you this. What's the offense, the Maryland criminal offense for using a fake ID? Do you know what the punishment is?
Well, I believe you could lose your driver's privilege, for one, and you could be fined. It's a misdemeanor.
Right.
Yeah, so I do know that.
And did you know it's a jailable offense?
No, I didn't know that.
Did you ever think, well, look, these people are committing crimes, we're going to call the police?
I mean, that's always my stance, but I wasn't the one that was in charge of the observation, the task that we were on.
Who was in charge?
The executive secretary.
Okay, and he was the one that would make the decision whether to call the police or not?
Yes, or the management, because they were the ones given, the fake ID and things.
Did you ever observe, while you were there, any staff, bartenders, barbacks, actually hand individuals alcohol that didn't have wristbands?
Not that didn't have a wristband, and we did, watch the bar area.
And they were complying with what you understood to be the process for handling under
the
21 and
wristband.
over 21.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I have to assume, how many people would you estimate were there?
300, 400, more.
More,
than that.
more.
Mhm.
And you're there an hour, you didn't just confront these individuals, did you? You confronted
No,
others?
we went to other people.
And you-
I went to people that I thought were suspect, meaning I thought that they probably were under 21.
They looked under 21,
Yes.
didn't they?
Mhm.
That was your professional observation.
That, I mean, personal, I think it's, just that,
Right.
they had a baby face and,
Right.
yeah, it sort of stuck out to me.
And you were wrong.
No, I wasn't wrong.
I mean, you did confront other people that you thought were under 21, okay? And
Oh, you're saying for the other people?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
you're
know, you
wrong.
hit and miss sometimes.
kind of missed it, didn't you?
Some
It's
of
okay,
them.
you're human. You missed it, didn't you? Okay. I didn't see in your report. What did you do with these people?
The manager that was on duty escorted them out of the premises.
Who was the manager on duty?
I don't know. I don't remember his name. I just know he was pretty much walking behind us and asking us, was everything okay? It's a heavy-set gentleman.
Don Lloyd. Was that
I
who-
don't know. I
okay.
really don't know his name.
Were you aware he was the maintenance man?
No, I don't know.
Did you ask him?
Yeah, he said he was in charge.
Okay. Did you talk to any of did you say, I want to talk to general manager?
No, I
I
didn't.
want to talk to the assistant manager.
I didn't.
I want to talk to the head of security.
I didn't.
Do you know of anybody that was in this inspection team that did that?
No, I don't know. I don't know if any of us did.
I know one of the other inspectors had a phone. Do you have a phone?
Yes, I.
Did you have the phone with you?
Yes, I had the phone with me.
Does that phone have a camera on it?
Yes,
Did you take photographs of any of the individuals that are involved in this report?
I didn't know.
Okay. Did anybody take photographs of them?
I don't recall anyone taking pictures. I really don't.
None of the individuals had any other ID then? Is that correct?
Not the 3 that I interviewed.
Okay. One of the customers, Ms. Diamato, presented you with what you consider to be a fake ID. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Your report indicates, and let me quote it, she used an ID from Connecticut which had her picture on it. Is that a correct representation of what you said in your report?
Yes,
Okay. What did she use it for?
to get into the club.
Okay. Well, you understand that there were individuals that are under 21 that could get into the club.
Yes,
So she didn't use the ID to get into the club.
Miss Diamato used this ID so that she could enter the club. Everyone has to show an ID to get into the club.
But-
Okay, so this is the one that she used to enter the club.
Did she have a wristband?
Diamato.
Do you have a recollection of
No,
whether she had
She
it?
didn't have on a wristband.
Did you ask any of the customers how, well, back to Ms. Diamato. Did you ask her how she obtained the alcohol?
No, she had alcohol in her hand.
Well, you didn't ask her if she got it from staff, or she got it from one of the other girls that used fake ID?
I didn't ask.
Were all these girls together, or did you kind of round them
The
up? from-
those 3 were
They
together.
all kind of knew each other then, is that what you're saying? So they were
They were talking to each other. I assume they knew each other.
Okay. How about any of these customers? Did you ask them how they got the fake IDs?
How did they get the fake ID?
How they got it?
No.
When you left, did you debrief any of the management?
The heavyset gentleman that was following us, we did let him know what we came up with. The 3 individuals that I talked to, he was basically there while I was interviewing them. And, showed him the IDs, showed him the wristbands, and that was basically.
Again, didn't speak to the general manager, didn't speak to the assistant manager, and didn't speak to the head of security, did you?
No, I didn't.
Okay, thank you, Inspector, I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Inspector.
Did the person you spoke with, did he ask you to hold on until he got one of his superiors, or did that person felt that they could handle the situation?
Commissioner Jones, he told me that he was in charge.
All right, thank you.
Did you do anything to verify that?
What am I supposed to do?
Ask if he's the general manager, ask if he's the assistant manager, ask if he's head of security.
No, sir, I didn't.
Thank you.
So do I leave out or what?
I think you're done here. What do you think?
I'm done.
Call her back? Okay. Yeah, you can have a seat. Thank you, Inspector Brooks. All right. There'll be no other witnesses for the agency, it looks like. Oh, you know what, Inspector Brooks, I need you back up here, and I'm so sorry.
Okay, no problem.
He just went so long, I just forgot everything. All right, let's do this. I'll do this quick for you, though. Were you expecting this to be an ongoing investigation?
Ongoing, we did tell them that, we could return, but no, not ongoing, like, come back the next day, but no.
So you weren't ever notified that the ongoing investigation was off?
No, never even heard the term ongoing.
And nobody said anything about political pressures keeping anybody away from that place, did they?
No.
Okay.
No, sir.
And were you under the impression that this was truly a random compliance check?
Well, I was told that we were going to Iguana Cantina to do a compliance check.
All right. Were you aware that there had been a complaint that had been registered about the
No.
establishment? Okay.
No. And I mean, it's not unusual for inspectors not to get all of the details if that was the case.
Right,
you know.
right. I'm just curious as to your take on it. All right, thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Mr. Chairman, I would
Unless you have a question based on my
No,
question.
I
Okay.
have no question based on that.
All right,
Normally,
any
I would make-
testimony?
I will briefly put testimony because I know the hour is late. Mr. Cheney, I'll get him. I'll get him. He's outside.
All right, Mr. Cheney, come on in. You were sworn earlier, right?
Yes.
All right, give us your first name, your first and last name again, spelling.
Samuel Alexander Cheney II.
All right, good afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Cheney, make sure you speak into the mic, which I haven't been doing
Are
properly.
you okay with all witnesses returning?
No, I will ask the commission to make that determination. I have probably some harsh comments in regards to some of the testimony, so. Yeah.
We'll make those comments without, closing's not going to keep them out of here, so.
Bring them in.
All right, yeah, witnesses are allowed to
With the
return.
understanding that their testimony is now completed and they will
Correct.
not be
The testimony
testifying
is
any further.
completed. The board's not going to recall anybody, so if that's what you're asking. So,
Yes.
yeah.
May I begin? Mr. Cheney, tell your relationship to Iguana Cantina.
General Manager.
Okay. And Iguana Cantina is now known as Soundstage, is that correct?
Yes, Soundstage.
And how long have you been in the position as general manager?
3.5 years.
What are your duties there?
I oversee daily operations, hiring, training, marketing, promotions.
Yeah, it seems to come and go.
Sorry. Promotion, just oversee all the daily activity of the venue.
In terms of security and things like that?
Yes, I oversee all staffing. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. All right.
Tell us how much experience you have in the bar scene, nightclub scene business.
I've been in the business for 24 years. I started out in security, got into bartending, got my first bar manager job at 95. I then moved to Hawaii for college and bartended there. I left school my junior year, came back, opened up a bar in Crofton, ran that for 8 years.
What was that?
Coconuts and then fins. And then I went from there. I went to the GM of Cancun Cantina. After that, I ran Mex and Power Plant Live. Also was the GM of the entire plaza, with the Plaza Bar, the beer tubs. I oversaw Mosaic and Rock Bar when the regional manager was out of town. After that, I was at Bedrock, and here I am now.
In your position as general manager, what management staff was underneath you and was present the evening that this incident?
We had an assistant general manager and a head of security.
Okay. And who's the assistant manager?
His name is Justin Bangoy.
And the head of security?
Jason Sign.
They're not here today, but can you just proffer to us how long they have been in the business?
Justin's been in the business for just over 11 years. Jason's 20 plus.
The head of the security?
Head of security, Jason's been 20 plus years.
There was a promotion the night of this event, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. What is the admission policy on that night?
It's 18 and over to get in, 21 to drink.
Can you describe the process for handling customers on a typical night like this?
Yes.
I'm going to show you something. It's a chart. Will this assist you in your description?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I have made copies for all of the members. I think it would speed the matter on quicker to use that rather than...
Licensee's second is admitted, licensee's first, your affidavit is admitted. Regarding your first exhibit, while we still have a moment, it says affidavit of James J. Temple Jr., but it's actually the affidavit of Laura.
Yeah, I must have...
But I mean, the contents of it are Laura and Freehand's
yes.
statements, so we'll accept it when you say, just note that. Just thank you. All right, received.
Using this chart, can you explain to them the process?
Yes, this is the screening process for admission. Initial contacted screening, what that is we have 2 security guards stationed at the beginning of what would be a line to get in. Their jobs are to assess the dress, attitude, and possible intoxication of potential customers. Once you get past them, they direct you into 2 lines. If you are under 21, you stay to the left. If you're over 21, you go to the right, where there are 2 more security guards. For the under 21, the security guard checks the ID. Seeing that they're between 18 and 20, he'll take a stamp and put a stamp on their hand next to their thumb. For the other side, for the 21 and over side, they'll check the ID. When it's determined that they are over the age of 21, they get a wristband on their right wrist.
What's the purpose of the wristbands?
The wristband it's a control. It's just something that's easy for the staff to recognize who's supposed to be able to have alcoholic beverages.
And where's the wristband placed?
It's always on the right wrist.
Why is that?
It's just consistency, so everyone in the staff knows what to look for. Customers don't generally pay attention, so if they try to take it off or give it to someone else, a lot of times it could end up on the wrong wrist.
What if any identification is there for under 21?
Under 21, they just get a stamp. We keep the stamp in this general area of between your thumb and your pointer finger. The theory behind that is if you're holding something, you're reaching for something, it's always visible to the staff to see the stamp.
And after they're wristbanded, what happens?
The next step is they go up to the ticket booth. That's where they pay for their admission. If they are over the age of 21, they show their wristband. They're given a single red 12-ounce cup. If they're under 21, they're given a clear 12-ounce cup.
Why clear?
It's easy to see the contents. It's a high contrast between the red and the clear, and you can see items in the cup such as beer or colored mixers, blue, green, things like that have to be made from alcohol.
And the color of the cup for the over 21?
The red is just another, again, it's just another control. It's a definitive cup that stands out that you can see. The bartenders know the red cup, and you have to have the red cup and a wristband to get served. You can't have one or the other.
Where do they get the cup?
They get the cup at the box office. When they pay for admission, they show their wristband, and that's how they get the cup. That's the only place that cups are kept.
What do you mean the only place?
If you go to the bar and you have a wristband but you don't have a red cup, the bartender won't serve you. There's no cups kept behind any of the bars. The only way to get a new red cup is if you bring back a broken or destroyed cup, you can turn it in for another cup. If you don't have a cup to turn in, you just don't get another cup. You don't get to drink that night. And that helps us control the amount of cups of one person that's 21 and one red cup in the building at a time.
How about the obvious question of inside passing of alcohol from 21s to under 21s?
It starts at the bar, 1 drink per person per cup with wristband. So if you walk up with 3 red cups saying they're for your friends, you're not going to get served your drink or their drinks. Everyone who has the wristband and the red cup has to get their individual drink. And then beyond that, it's security stationed at various places around the establishment. There's roaming security. And everyone acts as security when it comes to the passing of alcohol. Our bathroom attendants have radios. The bartenders, if you come up without a wristband and a red cup in your hand, the bartender's going to take the cup and throw it in the trash. All the way up to myself. Everyone oversees that.
Okay. In terms of security present that evening, how many security were there?
We start with 5 inside, stationed in various places and roaming. We have 5 that starts outside, so generally it's 10 security guards per night, and then we move them in as the patrons come in, still maintaining 2 to 3 security outside.
And when you say move them in, you move them from the outside security checkpoints to the inside?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying? Okay. Are you aware of any involvement of Iguana personnel directly serving alcohol to any of the individuals listed?
No.
How would you know that?
We monitor the staff throughout the night. We watch the pouring. We watch how they interact with customers. We talk to the staff at the end of the night, and we also reviewed our surveillance video.
Okay. Tell us about the surveillance video.
We have cameras positioned in various places around the bar. That record for the night, and myself and the assistant general manager reviewed the tapes from that evening to see if we could see any minors being served.
How many hours did you review?
28 to 30 total.
And why so many hours?
So many cameras. You had to pay attention to we could each only watch one camera at a time, so.
Okay. Any indication in any of that video of any bartender, bar pack acting in an improper manner?
No.
And if you had seen that, what would you have done?
We terminated the employee.
Let's talk a moment about fake IDs. What's the process for recognizing fake IDs?
Excuse me. The first part is training. We require that all of our security guards at ID be TAM certified.
What does that mean? I know the commission probably knows.
TAM is training in alcohol management. We feel it's important for the security to go through this process, even though it's not required, because not only does it teach alcohol management, ways to see intoxicated customers, how to deal with them. But we do a private class, so that also about 40 to 50% of the class is dedicated just to IDing.
Okay. What do you mean by a private class?
We had John Murray come out, and he gives a class just to our employees. And the reason that we do that is because he can give a class based on what our business model is. The class generally is 3 to 4 hours long. We don't have to have an hour of that time for packaged goods and to go. he can pretty much dictate exactly what goes for us. And within that class, you know, I'd say a good 50% of it was dedicated to checking IDs. He brought various IDs in. He passed them around for the staff to go through. And one of the things that I was glad to see, because I hadn't seen it before, was he brought the Chinese IDs in.
What about the Chinese ID?
China has an entire industry just on making these IDs. You can send $250 over a website and get a perfect ID. If you order up to 10 of them, they're only $100. He said it's not illegal because they're considered a novelty item. He passed these around. One of them on the back of the Maryland State ID, there's a tiny signature in the left corner. One of them was missing that. He said that's the only flaw that they've been able to find. The other one was perfect. He said it fools police. If it gets scanned, the scanners pick it up. It's nearly impossible to pick up the quality of the Chinese IDs.
What do you do in terms of your staff do in terms of ascertaining a fake ID?
If there's an ID in question, the first thing we do is use the driver's license guide.
What is that?
It's a yearly publication that comes out that has every state and nation's IDs in it. It keeps you current on all the new IDs that come out, and it shows you all the IDs that are still active. And just shows you things of what to look for each state to make it real.
Okay. You mentioned scanners. Why don't you use ID scanners?
There's a few reasons. They don't work nearly as well as what the companies who make them tell you they do. They're extremely slow. My personal experience is I find that they make security guards very lazy. I've seen at casinos in other states, I've seen people walk up with an ID and scan it, and the person never even look at the ID. The green light goes off, they let people in. They never actually look at the ID to see that it's a 40-year-old person with a 19-year-old girl with the ID in their hand. And lastly, the Chinese IDs are scannable. All the information comes up.
All right, we're pretty exhausted by this exhaustive approach.
Okay. Two questions. All right. That evening, you were the general manager on duty, is that correct?
Yes.
Did anyone from the inspectors involved in this case ever speak with you or talk to you about the procedures?
No,
Are you aware that they ever spoke with either the assistant manager or the head of security?
not to my knowledge.
Thank you. That's all I have.
When you were there that night,
Yes, sir.
did you see any disruptive flow, such as strangers walking around with badges around their necks, stopping your customers, asking them questions?
Um,
Anybody report to you anything?
No, I did see the inspectors in the building, but no one actually talked to me.
Do you think it was a necessity to just walk up and find out what was going on?
I mean, we were watching what they were doing, but we didn't want to interfere with. We didn't interfere with what they were doing.
So if someone did ask for you, you still would not have interfered with what was
If
going
they
on?
asked for me, I would have been available to look at inspecting.
But based on what was happening on the floor, you felt like it was under control?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Cheney. All right, let's keep it close on closing. Let's just
That's why I'm presenting this.
make points that, yeah.
Just presenting, this is a hearing memoranda that I've done on the legal issues involved. I know that Mr. Chairman, that you and the commission are familiar with them. It's a lengthy argument. I'm not going to make those legal arguments. They have to do with 2108D and as well as the 4.10 in regards to the legal requirements that I believe, as the chairman is well aware, 2108D and the requirements there, the criminal requirements are negligible with a $50 fine as opposed to this situation. My closing basically is that we have some, I made some evidentiary objections that I think are extremely valid in this case. It would have been, other than, a postponement of what has been a long pending matter, we would have had all of this material. We'd have had an opportunity to review this material. Frankly, at this point in time, what we have, let's talk about the three young ladies that were involved in this case. They're being calmed down. They're told they're not going to go to jail. We have no idea, other than what they say, which is clearly hearsay, about what their real age is. The IDs themselves, frankly, are not in the record. There's no were never admitted into the record. It's an opinion that was given because I objected it was a belief. I objected to the opinion, which was sustained and never then moved into evidence. So there's actually no opinions about them, and as I indicated before, it'd be fundamentally unfair to allow that without us at least having them ahead of time in regards to this matter. We're not sure about the last one, the first individual that was discussed, how they even got the alcohol in this case. We've described to you the procedures that are used. The inspectors, frankly, have not rebutted that. They didn't even observe it or make notes of it. There's some serious questions about the notes involved in this case that are being used by one inspector, that are done by one person and then being used by another person. There have been some allegations that are about influences and issues that I think taint the testimony, not this board, but taint the testimony of those in regards to this matter. There's been no indication. The board, I believe, would openly say, we've been influenced or some way. They would have done that. But I believe that goes to the credibility, and that's what we're talking about, the credibility of that individual witness when they're talking about that. In fact, we have a fundamental issue here about the credibility of this whole process. We are told in the beginning that there's a complaint that issued this, yet every report is talking about a random compliance check. This was not a random compliance check. It wasn't. We know that, at least from the executive secretary's description. There was a, quote, ongoing investigation. But one of the inspectors doesn't even know about that. And then it stopped for unknown and unclear and clearly biased reasons in regards to this matter. I mean, these are real fundamental questions about the integrity of the evidence in this case. My final argument is, otherwise, this is a mere strict liability statute. And I don't believe that the cases that I've cited say that. If the licensee uses reasonable process, and no one has said there's not been an iota of testimony other than the licensee's testimony about whether the process is unreasonable in any manner. There's none. They didn't know what the process is. At least one, they didn't examine it, and they have had no one to come in, this is the wrong way to do it. Otherwise, you have to have perfection. And that's not what the statute is all about. That's not what we're about. That's not what human beings can be. It's a reasonable standard. Did they act in a reasonable manner? Based on the evidence presented today, I believe that the licensee did, and that none of these charges should be sustained. That's my question.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to go off the record. All right, we're going to go back on the record for our decision phase. Jury came back quickly. It's 4:52 p.m., so yeah, that might have something to do with it. All right. We're back on the record. 2 p.m. case, decision phase. Cheryl Adams and Ian Brown, Iguana Cantina LLC, trading as Baltimore Soundstage, 600 East Pratt Street. We've got 4 separate 2B 12108D and 401.A violations. We heard from Inspector Umar Abdul Hamid, Inspector Karen Brooks, Executive Secretary Samuel Daniels, and we received reports we received written reports from both inspectors in the matter. We received exhibits from Mr. Temple representing the licensed establishment, including an affidavit of Lauren Friant from Mr. Temple's office, a screening process for admission from the licensee, and a hearing memorandum submitted by Mr. Temple as the third exhibit. The board will start with the evidence. We heard from the executive secretary that based on a complaint he'd received at a September underage drinking task force meeting, that he ordered a investigation into Soundstage. Inspector Abdul Hamid responded, as well as Inspector Brooks. Inspector Abdul Hamid testified there were about 500 people there that evening. Spent an hour and 15 minutes in the establishment. Did take down information on what he believed was an underage person in possession of alcohol who claimed that she was served by the bar for $12, named the drink, seemed to possess the requisite knowledge of the information that would make us believe that she was telling the truth. She knew how much it cost to get in. She knew it was a bottomless cup. She knew it was Jolly Rancher. Inspector smelled the drink, smelled the alcohol. We believe we have enough there, especially since we know that the inspector did in fact make a recording of the information, including her Soundex number, that we do find by a preponderance of the evidence under 401A in that case that there was a violation, that in fact the licensee's agent, a bartender, did in fact give this person, furnish this person with alcohol that she was consuming while under the age of 21, because all she had on her was an identification card or MVA driver's license indicating that she in fact was not 21 years. And we find that by a preponderance of the evidence. We thereafter deal with the cases involving Inspector Brooks. Inspector Brooks did a thorough report. Inspector Brooks is a credible witness. She indicated that there were 300 or 400 people on site at the time in question during her investigation. She indicated in her report that there were several IDs being possessed by several of the patrons in the bar that were very suspicious. She did not believe they were real IDs. Later, we heard from General Manager Sam Cheney as to the controls that are in place to prevent underage consumption. Mr. Temple filed an affidavit, I imagine is a paralegal, indicating that she did on several occasions speak or attempt to speak with Inspector Brooks and with Deputy Executive Secretary Jane Schroeder regarding all of the different documents and different evidence that would be used in this hearing. And through no fault of Inspector Brooks, it does appear that there has been a discovery failure here that would very likely cause prejudice to the licensees. During her testimony, Inspector Brooks, we learned, had the identification cards, the fake IDs, as they might be. We'll call them that for the record. The possible fake IDs in her possession. She had wristbands in her possession, and she had the notes of Executive Secretary Samuel Daniels in her possession. And won't even get into whether that could be covered by work product, but certainly we'll just address the identification cards. Those cards are something that the defense has an absolute right to see if they exist. And this is something that cannot be placed on one inspector. It's a policy that needs revising. And it also needs more communication, because everybody needs to know what everybody in this agency has. We don't leave things in the file routinely because they disappear. But at the same time, you certainly have a right to know of their existence prior to showing up here. For those reasons, we are dismissing the remaining charges and letting you know that it is our belief, despite the fact that you have 30 days to file a petition for judicial review, it is our belief that that Inspector Brooks knows what she's looking at in an identification. And so we just ask you to make sure that your licensee's Exhibit 2 on your screening process, that you go through that and see if you can't make that watertight.
Understood.
All right, there's a $125 hearing fee, total of $625. Thank you very much for your time. We're off the record.
That was a $500.
$500,
I just wanted to mention.
$125 administrative
Got that.
hearing fee.
Thank you.
Okay, we're off the record. Thank you all.